Hi, this is Drew Jones of Drew's Guitar Shop in Seattle, Washington, and today I wanted to talk about this interesting thing that came in. I say interesting thing because it's not necessarily the guitar that I want to talk about here. It's a very poorly executed repair that was done to it at some point, which I'll get to in here in a minute. Just to tell you about the guitar for a second, this is an old Aria 12-string. It's bolt-on neck, which is good because it's got a neck issue with it, and instead of doing a neck reset, what we can do is we can do a Fender-style shim to correct the neck angle issue that it has, which is one thing that it's in here for. It's also an old Aria, which is pretty neat. These guitars are made at the same Matsumoku factory that made those Yamaha red labels that everybody loves and tries to find on Craigslist. That guitar factory actually made a number of different brands. This was kind of their house brand. And so these guitars are actually built to a pretty similar sort of quality that those old Yamahas were. They are pretty solid guitars. I have one of these at home as like my nylon string that I use for recording sometimes. It's a great guitar. I love it. When I first got it, I called it a haunted guitar because it sounded so nice and it was so loved by somebody that like it just had some kind of mojo in it that just, really carried over. But anyway, getting on to this guy here. So one of the first things that I noticed was, because this came in for just kind of some setup work is what the guy wanted, but when I took a look at the top, I first noticed this bridge coming up, and it's pretty pronounced in some spots, and so this is definitely going to have to come off. It's going to have to be re-glued, and we're going to have to go in under these inlays, because under those inlays lives some screws and bolts that are, the only reason that this part of the bridge hasn't also started coming up. So we're going to have to re-glue that. I always drop a mirror inside a guitar when I go to inspect it, and I especially will drop a mirror and take a very close look in the inside if there's a bridge separation issue like this that's going on, because sometimes that's indicative of some braces coming loose. Got in there, and what I saw was this guy. Look at that thing. If you don't see what I'm looking at, look at that giant square of brown wood that's got two bolts sticking out of it and a chunk broken out of it. It's in between those two X braces. That thing isn't supposed to be there. That piece of maple that's under there is the bridge plate, and I talk a little bit about that and bridge plate retainers in a video that I made a little while back. But this thing here was probably meant to serve the same function as a bridge plate retainer, but the problem is it's like a 1/4 inch thick. This is a huge honking piece of wood that's under there, and it is a lot of weight to have on an acoustic guitar. Now, this is a 12-string, so it probably cares a little bit less about the weight than, maybe a 6-string would, but like that's still a lot of weight. And so I'm kind of hoping that that's not glued in and that we can just kind of go in and remove it. On that note, though, having gotten all the strings out of this thing, and one of these strings is really stuck in that thing down there, like really, really stuck. So I'm kind of unhappy with the way that thing is working down there. Anyway, I went ahead to go pull this guy out and check this out. I might luck out here. I think that may not actually be glued in, and kind of what I'm hoping is that it is stuck to these two bolts back here, and that these two, what look like Fender pickguard screws, are, bolted into the other half of it, and that's kind of what's holding it in. So I don't see a lot of glue squeeze out, and I'm gonna guess that somebody who would make a decision to put in a repair like that wouldn't have really cared about cleaning out squeeze out. So I'm inclined to think that these mechanical connections might be the thing that's keeping that there. Either way, I'm going to try to remove that, and the hope is to install a bridge plate retainer that actually is appropriate to the guitar. So we're going to take a piece of rosewood probably and put it in there and do the whole bridge plate retainer thing and get that all sorted out down there and make it look a lot nicer. Past that, this guitar doesn't really have a whole lot that's going on with it that's too alarming. Neck angle being the biggest issue to the player, because that's the thing that's causing the playability issues. There are also some inlays that are coming up. These old celluloid inlays shrink over time, and they kind of have a tendency to start coming up like these guys are here. So we're gonna have to re-glue those and get them to the point where they're solid. They do move a little bit, which is pretty typical when you see that kind of stuff happening. So we're just gonna go ahead and drop some super glue in there, which will dissolve with that celluloid and get it to stick down nice and solid. And might do some fill work around them, make them look all pretty. And yeah, past that, there's not really a whole lot going on. I do wish that I was doing a refret on this guitar. The frets on this thing are really, really low. But it kind of being what it is, I think that we're going to try to get it out of here for as little money as possible. And as it stands, this is going to be like a 200-something repair instead of like a, 600-something repair. So I think that, we'll be able to get this guy a playable guitar for pretty cheap. And it's a 12-string, and it's an old Aria, so that's really neat. Anyway, I might come back to this guitar and show you more when I get more done on it. We'll see how it goes. I got the bridge off. The tool I like using for removing bridges, by the way, is this guy here. And one of these guys here. It's an ideal tool for doing that. The thing I like about this iron is that it basically just kind of covers the bridge and not a whole lot else, and so you don't really need to worry about like heat shielding and stuff. I also got this guy out. Now, it did appear that there was some glue that got down in here. You can see that there's not a whole lot of glue coverage, just basically kind of, it was tack glued in place at these 2 points. And I'm not sure if that was intentional or if this bridge had been re-glued at some point. It's possible that the bridge had also been re-glued because, I just think that some of this glue that's down in here looks like it wasn't quite, original. Like this guy here looks like it's probably not. It could be though. Anyway, it looks like there was just a little bit of glue on here, and what I ended up doing was just taking the palette knife, this tool here, and going inside and just kind of sliding it in there just to see if I could. And since I could, I just kind of scooched it a little bit to the point where I could kind of see that it was actually making real progress without a whole lot of tearing sounds. And so what I did was I just kind of scooched it until I could scooch it all the way around and kind of lift the thing off, and it looks like it just took a little tiny chunk of the bridge plate with it. Now, I haven't even taken a look at the bridge plate, but I'm going to guess that the bridge plate is pretty shot in here, so not too worried if there are little splinters that came off, because again, we're going to be putting a bridge plate retainer in here, and that's going to fix that problem. But as it stands, I just wanted to show you this gigantic piece of wood that was in there, because like this is a significant amount of weight, and it's a significant amount of material. Now, this instrument is bellied a little bit on top, and like a lot of people will be really alarmed when they see this kind of bellying on an older instrument, especially a thin-braced instrument like one of these old Japanese guitars. I'll say that a little bit of belly never hurt anybody. People put bridge doctors and all kinds of stuff in guitars to prevent this kind of thing, and it's generally speaking not really that big of an issue unless it's really, really pronounced. Now, this does look like it's kind of pronounced, but, and this is a big but that bridge was coming up, and it is a 12th string. And it also, had that massive neck angle too, which really puts an extra bit of pressure, in the bridge area, which kind of lifts. And so what I think I'm going to go ahead and do here is I'm going to go ahead and assume that unless I run into anything in here that looks like it's not structurally sound, that what we have here is a structurally sound soundboard, and that everything is going to go, pretty much normally if we just do the bridge reglue. I am going to sand this bridge flat on the bottom. It's got a little bit of a radius to it, and I'm going to sand it a little bit flatter than it is now before I do the bridge reglue, and that will kind of flatten out the top a little bit, but I do think that I'm mostly just kind of to rectify damage that was done by kind of allowing that you know, peeling up bridge to be on there under pressure with that neck angle issue. And so, you know, I think we'll be able to kind of calm this down, and at the end of the day we'll have a 12 string that plays great and sounds great, and will sound a hell of a lot better without this chunk of wood living under the soundboard.